Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division video today by me, Vulcan. Today I have for you a battle group overview of the 101st Airborne. This is a deck that has come to be one of the most popular 1 versus 1 decks, and I will be talking about some of that during the video, but I'm just going to be going through my own choices in the deck, what I feel is good, and how I feel you should space out the amount of cards you take in each tab, and I think it's quite different to the way that a lot of people would set it up initially. So let's jump in first of all to the Recon tab. In the Recon tab you have these wonderful things called Pathfinders. These are 2-star Recon squads with an AT weapon at 100 meter range, and at 2 stars these guys are pretty damn good. They can use all of their weapons at close range, giving them a total HE power of 9. And with a 3-star veterancy can be very, very good. They also have very high optics and very good stealth, so really, really nice squad. Definitely would recommend taking all 3 cards of these. They only cost 30 points to bring in, and you'll never have run out of Recon by the end of the game. Now the other thing that you could take is possibly like some Recon, the 2-man Recon squads, if you don't want to use Recon in combat. And you also get like a Jeep 30 cal with that, which isn't too bad. The Recon with the M20 is a choice, with the 50 cal vehicle, the M20. I mean, I wouldn't bring either of those just because Pathfinders are so good, and why would you miss out on bringing a Pathfinder unit? That's the way I see the Recon tab in this one. As for the M8 Greyhound, just a really nice motorized support unit for pushing up with your units, and it comes with the 7 AP gun and 2 machine guns, so yeah, quite a nice fast mobile recon unit to support maybe a tank in the mid game, breaking through the lines wherever you can, kind of thing. I don't tend to bring them in too often in this deck, but can be useful in certain situations. That's pretty much a Recon tab. It's pretty simple, 4 cards you get, and I'm filling through them with Pathfinders. If we move on to Infantry, this is where things get a bit difficult because there's a lot of choices for the 101st Airborne, and it's very much a matchup between do you like flamethrowers or not. So in Phase A, 1 squad of Airborne leader is definitely a necessity for your extra veterancy, not just for your infantry squads but also your recon squads. And then you want to obviously be taking some airborne rifles. So there is the chance to get airborne rifles with 1-star veterancy, and I'm actually taking 2 cards of those to give me 6 airborne rifles available with 1-star veterancy, making them 2 stars when you have an airborne leader nearby. This gives them 11 HE at close range and 10 HE at long range. Pretty all-round good squad. Really, really strong actually in certain situations, only really beaten back by Fallschirmjägers at one-on-one combat. But that's mainly only due to veterancy often. But either way, getting 1-star airborne rifles is nice. I have the non-veteran airborne rifles in there as well, the squad of 5, because I find that they fill a defensive role. Like when you don't think the veterancy really matters, like you're just suppressing a unit, or you just need a squad to like ambush something, like a airborne rifle squad without veterancy can just do that job, whereas the airborne rifles with veterancy can directly engage infantry, light vehicles and so on, and be effective at that. If you're in a forest, you will be wanting to take at least 1 card of airborne engineers. These are definitely worth having in this deck because they are 11-man squads with a napalm. Like, just imagine that. You got a 9 HE on your 3 Thompsons, you got 4 HE on your M1 Garands, then you have a 12 HE flamethrower, which literally just destroys enemy infantry. These guys are pretty much unbeatable at the moment in forest engagements and engagements that occur within 100 meters. Airborne engineers, so worth having. It's very much an argument whether or not you would bring in 2 cards of airborne engineers, and I would possibly suggest taking a card of airborne rifles out with the 1-star veterancy and changing it for 5 more airborne engineers with the 1-star veterancy, because they are that good in certain situations. However, it really depends on the map. In Phase A, I am going to be going for the two 50 caliber machine guns for my machine gun support. You can get a card of 4 30 caliber machine guns, but I find the 50 caliber machine guns are a lot more versatile for helping you deal with light vehicles, which can be pinned down by this gun. Really, really nice in an in-place position, like a house or something, and yeah, they can really tear apart infantry as well as pin down those light vehicles, so that's really nice. If we move on to Phase B, I'm bringing in one card of engineers. These are good backup cheap infantry for taking on infantry one-on-one again in forests. So if you're running low on engineers, like airborne engineers, these engineers are probably just as good for taking on infantry squads cheaply in forests, because they have the 22 HE power satchel charge, and they have 2 of them. So really, really strong unit. They don't need the veterancy to be effective because they rely on the satchel charge, so that's even better as well. Then I have a squad of glider rifles coming in. Now this is something that I'm not as sure about, whether or not I should drop out the card of glider rifles in Phase B for more airborne engineers from Phase A. But glider rifles, I find they have 8 HE power from range, and that's actually pretty effective for playing defensively, and they are only 20-point squads, which makes them more like Osttruppen from the German side of things, just without the limited morale. So yeah, in my opinion, glider rifles, they're really good. I keep them in my deck, not for 1v1 purposes, but more for 2v2, 3v3, where you need to spread out infantry a bit more, and that's why I have them on the deck. But this is another card you can swap out for more airborne engineers from Phase A. Then I have another card of 50 caliber machine guns, 4 more of those in Phase B. These guys are 1-star veterans again, really, really useful. And then finally, a card of glider rifles. These guys are a command squad with a bazooka, which is really useful. They can use all of their weapons from 200-meter range, which is nice. And they do come with this truck which has a 50 cal, which can be useful fire support, although it doesn't have any armor, so don't let it get too close to infantry, which can use light arms fire to kill it. So yeah, just be wary of that. Otherwise, pretty solid leader squad for Phase B. And since you have a solid 10 infantry slots to be filling up, I think justifying bringing in 2 command units or 2 like command packs is worth having. So yeah, that's about it for our infantry. Let's move on to the tanks tab. Now this is a tab that I think a lot of people go wrong in with this deck. You don't need tanks on this deck, you just don't. And I think in Phase A, the only thing you need to rely on is the 1-star Locust, not just because they are okay, but because they have command radius, so they are command tanks. The command M22 Locust, really, really nice tank. 70 points, I don't know, it seems a little bit expensive, but either way, really nice tank to help you push with your infantry and take advantage of holes that you make in the enemy defenses. I wouldn't bring them in just at the start of the game, never bring them in at the start, it would be a complete waste of points. But if you're finding that you're gaining some momentum and you need a mobile unit to join you, a Locust is really nice because it's pretty decent speed and will keep up with your units very nicely. Then in Phase B, I do have one card of the M4DD, and these are again just continued infantry fire support. Everything about this deck is like supporting your infantry and your Phase A pushes, so that's where the M22 comes in handy. And in M4, this is more about solidifying that lead with some substantial armor, and the M4 does the job in that case. Stuarts are pretty much redundant in Phase B, although the command Stuarts could be nice if you could find an extra slot in the tank tab. But yeah, for me, 2 cards of tanks. I've only got a total of 4 tanks in this deck, and that pretty much says it all for the way that I play this. Moving into the support tab, it's pretty easy to take your choices in this tab. Currently I use 1 card of Jeep supplies with 2 cards of M20 commands in Phase B. Again, pretty much just making up for command units and the lack of from other tabs. So I've got 2 command packs in Infantry tab, 2 command packs in Support tab, and 1 in the Tank tab, and that should be enough to get you through most of the game, and is quite a substantial amount. In my opinion, the Scott doesn't really fit into this deck. It can be useful, but it would be nice if you could bring it in Phase A. Since you can't, I don't think it's worth it. 50 caliber Jeeps are something you could try out, but for 35 points, they are very brittle units, and I find they just get killed way too easily. As for more supply, well, you don't really need the ducks in Phase C, unless you're going to be focusing heavily on artillery, but you'll see that's not needed when I get to the artillery tab. As for anti-tank, again, somewhere where I think a lot of people go wrong with this deck, you need a lot of Phase A AT guns because you don't rely on tanks, and you shouldn't be relying on tanks. These M3 guns are 40-point AT guns with 10 rate of fire, like 10 rounds per minute, with 8 AP value, which is actually pretty decent. It can kill most Phase A armor quite well, from 1000 meters as well. You can get 1 card of them which come with 1-star veterancy, definitely get those, and then 1 card without veterancy which gives you 4 of them. So that's 7 AT guns, 40 points a pop, and they are so good. They are so cheap, really nice for just splashing around the map. You can really go to town on the enemy with these M3 guns because you can set them up in really nice ambush positions, cover off your infantry wherever you need them. They roll around pretty quickly as well. You can see they have 15 km/h speed, which, I mean, doesn't sound like a lot, but allows them to move faster than, for example, an M1 gun with 13 km/h speed. Makes that little bit of difference. Bazooka squads, not a fan, just because they're 2-man squads and most of your infantry, especially airborne rifles, has bazookas anyway, so bazookas to me are pretty pointless. You bring in the M3 guns for the range, that's what you need them there for. Moving into Phase B, I've got more AT guns, the M1 guns with 3 of these guys, and I've got the card of 2 with the increased veterancy as well. In my opinion, worth having in Phase B just to help you hold the line. And moving into Phase C, I've got the 2 M10 destroyers with the 2-star veterancy, which turns into 3-star with a command unit nearby. So the way I normally do this is I would bring in like both of the M10s at the same time, or maybe just one each time, and then bring them in with a M20 command. And the M20 command will make the M10 a 3-star unit, and this thing can just pop anything with lower than 13 armor. And that's what you want to use it for. You don't want to engage this with anything that has like 14 front armor at max range, because you just won't win. You just won't win. So be very careful about that. But you can use it to kill light and medium armor that's left over, and you can also seriously like harm like infantry units and maybe like 1000 meter range AT guns moving into Phase C. But if you're coming up against super heavy German armor, don't rely on M10s. You need to really work on like setting up ambushes for those heavy tanks, and that's pretty much my anti-tank tab for the 101st. For anti-air, this is something that I've changed about quite a lot. I've been testing between using the MGMCs, the CGMCs and the Bofors. Currently I'm relying completely on Bofors, and that's just because they are 1-star veterancy, and I find that in Phase B, the Bofors are just so good at like pinning down enemy forces for your infantry to get into place. And what I mean by that is Bofors attacking ground forces, and then they're also fantastic against taking down planes. So they're not going to necessarily shoot down a plane, but with 1000 meter range and 10 HE, they could definitely stun them very quickly, and they're 80 points apiece, 2-star or 2-star veterancy with a command unit nearby. Really, really effective and accurate where they need to be, and that is extremely helpful for supporting your infantry and stopping you from being hit so hard in the sky. Furthermore, when you are using your air tab, having a place on the map where you have some Bofors set up is a great way to like bait enemy planes and then shoot them down with your own aircraft. So that's something to think about when you're bringing in your AA. Now this MGMC, great for ripping apart ground support like infantry and like just anything that gets into range of the 800 meter range will get torn apart because it's got 16 HE power with 1,610 rounds per minute. It's pretty insane. Also, it stuns aircraft very quickly, but to me what lets this down is the range. Whereas I find the Bofors, just that little extra 200 meter range can be really helpful, and the extra veterancy is great too. The CGMC is okay in that it comes with 250 cals and a 9 HE main gun, the 37mm autocannon. This has the 1000 meter range of the Bofors, which is why I used to have I think one card of the M15 CGMCs and one card or maybe two cards of the M15 CGMCs in Phase C. But having more Bofors in Phase B has always been something that I find has worked well with my air tab for the cost that you can bring in Bofors. So yeah, it's a tab that I think doesn't really matter what you bring because everything can be useful in certain situations. And you can still bait aircraft over MGMCs, for example, and stun them very quickly. But I just find Bofors are much more versatile in general, and they are also 8 strength as opposed to being a half tank, which can get popped quite easily sometimes. Either way, let's move on to artillery, and this is where things get really fun. So the reason that the 1v1 deck has been pretty strong so far is not only because they have very strong Phase A units like the Airborne Rifles, Airborne Engineers. These guys are really a strong part of why the 101st is so good in 1v1 at the moment. Also, really strong Recon units is ideal for 1 versus 1 as well. And again, M22 sort of cheap Locust tanks, nice as well. And also very cheap AT. That all adds up to like why this deck's so strong in 1v1. But another thing that makes it super strong is their cheap mortars for starters. 50-point mortars with 900 meter range. 1-star experience changes to 2-star experience, makes this a very fast firing mortar. Really nice unit. And then moving into Phase B, you can support yourself with these 4 GPAOPs, which are off-map artillery with 356mm naval guns available. 30 HE power on those with 105 meter splash damage. Really strong units. And I bring in both cards of these because for 150 points, you almost always pay yourself off. As long as you're just not throwing off artillery like in the middle of nowhere, you know, you're always going to hit targets based on what you see with your recon and pay yourself off with this unit. It pretty much always pays itself off twice over. It could easily score like 300 points worth of kills if you, for instance, you're killing like Pack 43s or just like a bunch of like expensive infantry, like 3 units of Fallschirmjägers with like a 356. That's like nearly paying off the vehicle itself, right? And that's with probably like 1 strike. So off-map artillery at the moment, really cost efficient and allows you to not only kill units, but stun and panic units to the point where they fall back and you can make up ground, which is the most important part of a conquest game mode, for example. It's not getting the kills, it's gaining the ground, and if you can dislodge the enemy from some ground because you've smashed them to pieces with artillery, that's, you know, gaining you points over the long run because you're gaining ground. As for the rest of the options, well, if you're struggling with counter battery, the M1 howitzer with the 2000 meter range can do the job instead of the airborne mortar, but I find the airborne mortar not only provides a very fast rate of fire, but it's just, you know, easier to have on the front line and much cheaper than like a M1 howitzer. So for the price of 1 howitzer, you get 2 mortars, and mortars fire way faster. Just do the job so much quicker. Yes, they require you to be in a shorter range, but howitzers, you know, I don't know, they're just too expensive in my opinion to justify bringing them in over the mortars. Or maybe what's the problem is that mortars are too cheap. But either way, that's the reason that I don't bring in any howitzers over mortars. Moving into Phase B, the 81mm mortars aren't useful anymore, and the 105mm howitzer, yes, it has extra HE power and AP power, but off-map, in my opinion, is so much better at the moment. Moving into Phase C, I've got both of the M3 OPs with the 22 HE power off-map artillery. For 100 points, these guys are invaluable to this deck and can continue your momentum well into Phase C. If we go and look at the air tab, we can see that first of all I have the P-51D Mustangs available. These guys are fantastic Phase A fighter bombers. Turn off your Winchester evacuation in the options and use these for not only like bombers but for fighters. So when they drop their bombs, you can just use them to try and shoot down enemy aircraft, especially like not necessarily fighters. I wouldn't say use multi-role to take on enemy fighters, but if you have like a multi-role unit that can shoot down other bombers, people don't see it coming. So what happens is you come in with your bombing strike, say, and they don't see that as a fighter, they see that as a bomber that's going to drop their bombs and leave. So they're quite happy to bring in their own bomber and do whatever they want to do on the map. However, if you drop the bombs and then keep your plane on the map, you can easily catch on to their bomber and shoot it down, for example, or like an anti-tank plane or something like that. And it's incredibly useful to know to do that. So I would say go into your options, turn off Winchester evacuation, and get used to using multi-role fighters as well as bombers and rocket planes, right? That's just something that I think is well worth knowing. There is a chance that you should bring in like P-51 fighters in Phase A, but I find that they just, I don't know, aren't really worth it. Like, in my opinion, P-51D Mustang with the bombs is going to do a much better job in Phase A. Not only is it going to provide you with those bombs, but with the fighter role. Whereas like a fighter, 150 points, yes, you get the good agility instead of medium agility, which is quite a big difference, honestly. But yeah, I just think you can wait until Phase B to bring in some 1-star P-51 Mustangs, which are really, really useful. Now, there is always the chance that you could drop out the more experienced P-51 Mustangs for more availability. I think in this case it might be worth doing because I'm only using 5 of the 8 packs available in the air tab. But I found that with my own aircraft micro, I find 2 P-51D Mustangs enough, and the extra veterancy is quite useful sometimes for accuracy, rate of fire, and also just stopping them from being suppressed so easily by enemy anti-air. Moving on, I have one card of the P-47 Thunderbolts with the 10 rockets, 15 HE power rockets. Great for just like sniping AT guns, great for sniping like infantry squads that are maybe poking your front line in, and say you're losing ground because of that like one squad or like one jeep or like a random half track. The P-47 Thunderbolts are really nice sort of reactionary aircraft to shoot those down. They can also be used to, of course, fight other bombers and multi-role fighters, but be aware that they do have bad agility. It's the same with the P-47 Thunderbolt. They have very bad agility, and that is a huge problem with using these Thunderbolts as multi-role fighters. So they're more something that I would recommend not necessarily keeping in the sky unless you have to. But you always have that choice, right? If you have Winchester evacuation turned off and you feel like you need the aircraft, then yeah, have it fly about. But most of the time you can probably be like, nah, I'd rather have it reload and come back and use it for its actual role again, i.e. use its rockets or its bombs. Now the P-47 Thunderbolt in this deck, 230 points, comes with 2 25 HE power bombs and 1 15 HE power bomb in Phase B. This thing is very strong for blowing up like hard positions or groups of infantry. Really, really great for those jobs. If you see maybe 2 or 3 squads together, a P-47 Thunderbolt, 230 points, normally going to get more than one use out of it. Yeah, bring one in, bomb, get out of there. That's what this P-47 Thunderbolt's all about. Really fast, really potent, going to do a lot of damage very quickly. A really nice reactionary aircraft, and also allows you to blow open a hole in the enemy defences. Now you can also get B-26B Marauders in Phase B. These guys come with 8 10 HE power bombs, but I find because they're not multi-role fighters like the P-47, not really worth bringing in. And the 10 HE power is kind of underwhelming, I feel, when you can get 3 really powerful bombs on the P-47, which is why I prefer to have that. There's a chance to have so many of these Thunderbolts, so there's always that to consider. And you can also get one of the B-26B Marauders with the 4 25 HE power bombs. But as you can see, if we move into Phase C, I have a B-26 card with this, basically the same card, but where you can get 2 of them. And I find that since B-26B Marauders are quite expensive, I won't be buying them until Phase C usually. Now, these Thunderbolts would be like Phase C cards with more veterancy if it was available, but since it's not, I don't bring them in. Now, something I've been considering with this deck, I've been using it quite a lot, is having more Mustangs available, in which case I might drop the Rocket Thunderbolts for more P-51 Mustangs in Phase C, because if you lose air supremacy with this deck, it can be quite detrimental to your strategy, because it's one more thing that you have to deal with that's killing your infantry. And without enough infantry, the 101st Airborne can really fall apart in terms of its overall strategy, and you can get rolled over very quickly. So as long as you can maintain the air, it makes things a little bit easier, I guess. So that's pretty much my deck. Let's talk about how things complement each other and what you would start with in this sort of deck. So you're going to be relying quite a lot on your Pathfinders for not only Recon, but taking on enemy infantry, because they are your only 3-star infantry squad available with a command unit nearby, and that makes them very useful in certain situations. You want to be bringing in Pathfinders, you want to be bringing in your airborne leaders, and you also want to be bringing in either airborne engineers if you're going to be moving into forests, or airborne rifles for town fighting at over 100 meter range. And, you know, like hedgerow fighting. Airborne rifles are going to do a lot better. AB engineers, they can be good in some towns where you're like very close to enemy buildings and there's not much line of sight going on. You can like flame out enemy units very easily, and they have very high like strength, you know, 11 men. So they're not going to die very easily. You want to be bringing in maybe your 50 cals to protect your flanks, because 50 cals are great at pinning, you know, not only infantry but light vehicles, so consider whether you need them at the start of the game or not. Sometimes you can wait until you're in the game a bit more to bring them in. You don't want to be bringing in your locusts at the start, but it's something that can support your units moving into towards Phase B. Like late Phase A, bring in maybe a locust to help you punch through an area that you've already taken advantage of. That's like a really good way to use the locust in my opinion. And then you want to be bringing also your M3 guns and your mortars. So this is a deck that uses all of its tabs very well. You want to be using Airborne Leader, Pathfinder, AB Rifles or AB Engineers, plus M3 guns and mortars in Phase A, and make sure that they're necessary. So you might not need a mortar, but you probably should bring at least one mortar at the start of the game. And then maybe 2, maybe even 3 M3 guns to cover off each area of the map that you're taking control of. This is the same in like a 2v2 and a 3v3, but I'm talking mainly 1v1 because I find it's a 1v1 deck. And then like what happens is you use your cost-effective infantry to take as much ground as you can in Phase A with the support of the M22 Locust and your mortars and maybe even the P51s if you find you need them. It just allows you to get so much ground early on, and then you just support that in Phase B. So in Phase B, you can either bring in M4s if you're not dealing with heavy armor, like too heavy. Like I would wait maybe a couple minutes into Phase B, see if anyone's bringing up anything heavy like a Panther D or something. If they're not, then you can maybe get away with using an M4 double D to like help push your lines. M20 commands, great, 1-star 50 cal unit, straight bang in there. Really allows you to be more versatile with how you use your command. bring in your M1 guns to solidify your position, but most of all, bring in your artillery. This is where the off-map really comes into play. B phase in this deck is all about solidifying your lead, and the way to do that is to crush enemy positions with the off-map artillery, and it makes your deck really, really sticky in phase B. Moving into phase C, you're probably going to start running low on infantry, and this is where you want to like start conserving things and playing maybe a bit more defensive. If you're overrunning the enemy, then don't stop. You do have like M3 OPs to continue like saturating the enemy with off-map artillery, and that really can like pin down even like the heaviest of tanks and allow you to get up there and ambush them with like bazooka squads and, you know, AT guns and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, it's quite a difficult deck to like tell you how to play, but hopefully what I've said makes sense, and you know, let me know what you guys think of this deck in the comments, of course. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, of course, let me know your variants of this deck, what you think should be different, what you think is good or bad about this deck. If you find you're having trouble with the deck, like why is that? You know, I love your discussions, guys, in the comments below. It's really helpful. Do you think I balanced it properly? Do you think I need more tanks or more airplanes? You know, all of that sort of thing. But either way, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.